What's up, guys? It's the Unhinged Engineer here. I'm back today with episode 25 of my grad school vlog. So if this is your first episode with us, welcome. Today I'm going to be breaking down the second assignment of CS 6475, which is the Computational Photography course as part of the larger Georgia Tech Online Masters in Computer Science program. So I think I'm about 3 or 4 weeks into the class at this point. Honestly, I can't remember, but the most important part of this is that it was the first hardcore assignment where we actually had to write some code, implement some stuff from a paper, and get into the nitty-gritty of what we actually learned in the lectures. Versus the last assignment, which was the Camera Obscura, check out the last episode for that, was a little bit more abstract and just kind of trying to demonstrate some important concepts. That assignment was cool too, but now we're like back, we're coding stuff up, we're doing what we really came here to do, which is learn how to write awesome image processing code. And so yeah, I'm super excited to break down this assignment for you guys today. So I'm gonna start off with what the assignment was. Then I'll get into some of the coding specifics, like what the environment was like and how we actually submitted things. And then I'll talk about some other miscellaneous stuff going on in the course, like peer feedback and what's next. So yeah, let's get right into the second assignment here. So pyramid blending is the name of this assignment, and it's a specific type of image blending that we were tasked with implementing. So to talk about pyramid blending, I'm gonna back up and first talk about cutting, which is kind of like the dumber version of pyramid blending that we learned also in the lecture, but weren't asked to implement because it's relatively simple. You can imagine if you have two images and you're trying to put them together, which is the core idea of blending, you could define what's called a mask. And all that mask does is define a boundary along which on one side of that boundary, you're taking pixels from one image, and then on the other side of that boundary, you're taking pixels from another image. And you could draw a boundary of any arbitrary shape, but the point is you're defining, like, within this area of the image, I'm grabbing pixels from one, and within the other areas, like outside of it, you're grabbing pixels from the other. And so the terminology that's usually used is like, there's a white image and a black image, and then the mask is another image of the same shape that half of it's black and half of it's white, and that determines where you're pulling pixels from for any given pixel of the final output, right? And so a cut is just like a step function where you switch from one to the other. Simple enough. Pyramid blending, I'm gonna describe in 2 steps here, right? The first step is like, okay, what if we take that boundary, instead of having it be a step function, we kind of have it be this ramp where we take like an average of the two, right? So as you approach that boundary, the relative weightings of each thing are like 50-50, right? So if you actually had a black image and a white image, at the boundary, you're getting something gray. And then as you move away from those, you get those gradients, like towards the white side of the image, you're getting lighter and lighter, and towards the dark side of the image, the black side, you're getting darker and darker and darker, right? And however you define the slopes of that kind of linear combination, that's what the ultimate combination of the two images would give you at that boundary point, right? So now we're kind of thinking, okay, we have a method of blending it that looks a little bit more natural. But a really interesting part of the lectures they talked about was like, how do you define the slopes of that gradient? And the idea is that it's based on the frequency responses of those images. And this I did think was super interesting. And I'll just reiterate here, as I've talked about in the last episode, the lectures are really, really solid. Thus far, I think the biggest strong suit of this course is the lecture content because it's really, really high quality. So they talk about, okay, we can FFT the crap out of these images and we get a frequency response that shows us the relative frequencies of information in different parts of the image. Right? And then what you could do is you could bound how wide that transition window should be based on the sizes of like the largest feature in the image and the smallest feature in the image. And you want it to be within those two, right? The follow-up question to that is, well, in any given image, like there's lots of features within it that are of different shapes and sizes. And so there's lots of different frequency bands that you might care about. Well, you could FFT the thing over and over and over again and get kind of different levels of fine at the highest level fine, which is the original image, all the way down, like downsample, 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 down to a very, very coarse representation of that image. And then for each kind of level of the pyramid, we're talking about a pyramid here. I'm drawing it upside down because it helps me think of it better, but pyramid, funnel, however you want to describe it. For each level of it, we automatically have defined the width of that transition window based on a Laplacian and some other characteristics of the algorithm that I'll leave to your imagination, right? The point here is that we're doing this repeated kind of linear blending at each frequency level of this pyramid we've built up through FFTing and FFTing and FFTing and downsampling, downsampling, downsampling. And then at the end, you get a very, very natural blend from one image to the other that is actually given to you by the frequency response of the images. Super cool to me. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was interesting. Is this something I'm ever going to use? No, I don't plan to work at Adobe and work on Photoshop anytime soon. So definitely, like, I think it was a good selection of kind of a contrived example, but got at the core points of like, hey, images are just like signals where we can glean information from the frequency response and then do cool stuff with it. So I think overall, if I had to kind of guess what the professor was trying to get at with this assignment, I think they succeeded. Let's talk about the coding, right? Because we actually had to do this. So to code this up, I was given a Python file with a bunch of like placeholder functions that implemented certain parts of this algorithm. There's like a reduce function, there's a Laplacian function, there's a collapse function for like at the end when you take that pyramid and you collapse it into one image. There's a few different steps that are outlined really well in the paper that this assignment is based on. And I also should say, I'm pretty sure all the assignments, or if not all, most of the assignments are based on a paper, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah, in any case, we're given placeholder functions that kind of are meant to stand in for each part of the algorithm, but they're effectively blank. It like raises a not implemented error until you actually go in and put in your code to return the thing that it's expecting, right? And so you go through all of these functions. They're actually called in the right order. Kind of, I guess you define how, like, the order in which they're called. Like, it is up to you to actually implement the algorithm in order, but the entry point, the natural entry point and exit point is kind of framed for you, right? So effectively you have to say, okay, you know, I have this smallest unit of the algorithm and I'm going to build my way up from that, right? Overall, I think this was an interesting way of structuring the assignment. Like, it definitely felt like less than a project, because if it was supposed to be a project, I'd imagine you're expected to actually structure your code in a way that corresponds to the algorithm that we're trying to implement, right? But for this, you're kind of given lines to color within and then kind of, you know, go nuts, go implement the math for each step of this algorithm. And we'll kind of buttress that, like bookend that, however you want to say it, for you. And I think that was good. I think it was a good setup. It was a bit different from the AI techniques for robotics projects / assignments, because those were more open-ended, but I have a feeling that the projects in this course, for which we're given like twice as much time, I think for project 1 that's coming up after assignment 3, we're given 2 weeks instead of 1. So I think for those, it probably will be more open-ended, and that remains to be seen. But for the assignments, like, I think it was pretty cool. It was kind of like a light version of a notebook. And I'll just preface that, or disclaimer that by saying I'm not a big fan of notebooks. I feel like they don't actually teach you anything. You're just kind of going shift, enter, shift, enter, shift, enter over and over again. And that's not really how I learned how to code. I learned how to code by coding. But this was great because it was actually like, it gave you the structure that's required to kind of keep you on the right track without actually hand-holding you. For the auto grader, I got 48 out of 50 points because I think I failed some test case. Like, it didn't break. I just got the wrong numbers and I didn't really care to figure out what was going on there. But my code is submitted along with all the images I used. There was a report associated with this. It was less intense than the Camera Obscura report for sure, which I really, really appreciated. Like, half of it was just talking about, you know, the basics of like, what images did you choose and why? And for your images, what do you think of this or that or that? And then there were some things that were just like lecture questions. So definitely way less intense than the first report for the Camera Obscura, which to me was like bordering on overkill. It took me a few tries to really get through the whole thing end to end. I'll briefly touch on the virtual environment. A lot of courses try to force you into Conda. I'm not a huge fan of Conda. I don't really have a good justification for that. I don't like it. So I just use like base Python Vim instead. And, you know, I had to convert a YAML to a requirements.txt file. It took me like 5 minutes. It wasn't a huge deal. And then after that, I was off to the races. The only thing that was strange is that we're being asked to use Python 3.8, which is really old. Like, I couldn't actually tell you what the difference between like 3.13 and 3.8 is, but I would imagine it's significant enough. I don't know. To me, that was just crazy because the earliest version of Python I've ever used is Python 3.9. I've never gone below Python 3.9, and here we are. So hopefully next course is asked me to do like Python 2 or something ridiculous. But yeah, aside from that, pretty good virtual environment setup. Everything's sunshine and rainbows. Okay, so basically that's everything I want to talk about for assignment 2. Excuse me, my brain is turning off. Let me touch really briefly on the peer feedback I did for assignment 1. So I had to look at the reports of 2 other students, kind of go through the images they took with the camera obscura, their discussion of those images, and just kind of give them feedback on it. Half of that feedback was like written, and then the other half was a rubric that I had to click through to give them scores on certain things. I thought it was fine. I don't really feel like I gained a lot from it, but at the end of the day, it didn't take very long, and I think there are definitely, I'll have to see what feedback I get on my report, but I understand why they have that. I think it engenders some kind of communication between the students, because one thing I will say, for whatever reason, I don't know why, I have a guess, but I don't know why, there is like no communication in the Discord. The Discord is a freaking ghost town. I don't really know why. Again, I have a few guesses, which I'll leave for the review at the end, but yeah, aside from peer feedback, which is obviously a very limited window of communication with somebody else, I have talked to no one else in this course thus far. Hopefully that changes, but we'll see. edX is pretty active though. I think they talk to the TAs a lot. I think if I had to guess why the Discord is a little bit less active is it seems like some TAs are in the Discord. I don't have any proof of that. And it also, based on what I've said in previous courses or videos about this course, they are very, very strict about academic integrity and working with others and all that stuff. Not working with others or ChatGPT, Sam Altman, I should say. So it seems like there might be a bit fear going on in the Discord. Who knows? We'll see. I'll keep trying to poke at it as like a science experiment and see if people actually respond. Like I posted something about A2, like, oh, I'm enjoying A2 a lot because we're actually coding. That was my whole post. Let me actually see if I've gotten a response, just out of curiosity. Oh, my Wi-Fi is not working. Never mind. Point is, it goes down. Okay, what's next in this course here, right? The next thing immediately is assignment 3, which is on panoramas. I haven't actually watched the lectures for those yet, so I am a little bit behind. I finished the assignment a bit early, took like a breather to get home. I was traveling, as well as take care of some stuff for work, but we're back now. Gonna bang out some lectures in the immediate future, and then right after that, I'm gonna get to the assignment. So that will be due next Monday/Tuesday, whatever, anywhere on earth, blah, blah, blah. That'll be due on Monday, and then I think after that I have 2 weeks, if I remember correctly, to do Project 1. I don't actually think Project 1 has been released yet, and even if it has, I have no idea what it's about. So that will be pretty exciting. I'm curious how the assignments differ from the projects, because I did really, really like this assignment. Just to reiterate that, I thought it was solid. I thought it bookended the lecture content, which is really, really great, very well, and yeah, can't complain on that front. So yeah, we'll see how assignment 3 goes with the panorama. I also have notebook 2 coming up, peer feedback 2, all the other stuff associated with this unit of the course, and yeah, that's about everything. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of the vlog. I apologize for a little bit of a ramble. Honestly, it's been a crazy week for me, which is why there's 2 vlogs instead of 1, 2 vlogs in a row instead of 1, followed by a weekly upload. So apologies for the delay on that normal video, but I got some good stuff in the pipeline. I'm excited to share it with you. And yeah, we are back where I'm supposed to be at my juicy 2-monitor desk, ready to go, and yeah, ready to make lots of content for you guys. So if you enjoyed this content or are interested in other content about professional development for young engineers like me, this is the channel for you. Please like, comment, subscribe, stay tuned, and I will see you in the next episode of my grad school vlog.